What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. All right, for any golfers out there that are injury-free but you want to stay that way, or if you've had an injury and you want to know how to fix it, you want to make sure your body's at optimal level structurally, flexibility, strength-wise, then today's guest is going to tell you how to do that. Dan Hellman, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Hey, Pete, I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. This is going to be a good one. So I've known you for a little over a year, and you have a practice. You conduct seminars. You teach high-level classes. You work with some of the biggest names on the PGA Tour, and I'm humbled you made this time to come on. But the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you find time to do all this?
That's a great question. You know, I guess it's a double-edged sword, Pete. I'm passionate and I love what I do, and so sometimes, unfortunately, the work can consume you, and it has consumed me over the last few years. So it's knowing when to take time off, and I'm going through that period right now. I needed to take a little break because I have been basically just going nonstop for the last 5 years or so. And when you love what you do, man, it's just the stuff just flows out of you, and it doesn't seem like work, even though there's a paycheck. But it's what I love to do. I don't know what else to say.
Outside of the passion you have for your kind of your two passions, right? You're a therapist, trainer, and we'll get into that today. But you're also your passion for golf. That really drives you. But is there anything else that you find drives you? For example, is it a desire to be successful, or is it a loathing failure? Does that play into it at all?
I think, I would be remiss if I didn't say, obviously the drive to be successful was there early on. But as I get older now, I'm starting to realize that life is more about than just, things and money. So I definitely had that drive early on. But the passion now for me is more, that's more of the drive. It's the quality of the work. It's, I've been told I'm like a weed. I never give up. I keep coming back. So it's just that ability to put your mind to something. And if I'm all in on something, it gets all of me. And, again, that can sometimes be to the detriment, of my own well-being. So like you said, it is difficult. And I have done a lot over the last few years, and I'm starting to see that. So, I'm starting to try to put some time out for myself. And I started playing some golf again, which as you know, I absolutely love. So I'm trying to balance right now.
Mm-hmm. I think that comes with age. I interviewed Randy Soma. He was the president of JCI, which is Johnson Controls. It's a Fortune 50 company. And he mentors young professionals now. And one of the things he asked them is, okay, what's your 5-year plan? Because 10 is too long. 1 or 2 can be too short. He said, what's your 5-year plan? And I said, I want to be CFO of a Fortune 100 company. He says, okay, what do you look like in 5 years? Meaning, have you foregone or neglected everything else because you're so driven and you don't pay attention to your family or your kids or your other things, and what do you look like in 5 years? So, and I don't think a lot of people think of that. So getting to what you said was having to take time off and having to rebalance your life. It seems to be something that's being learned now in the information age, where for the last 10, 15 years, we've been bombarded with everything, regardless of field, right?
Yes. Agree 100%.
So what would you describe what you do? In other words, are you a therapist? Are you a trainer, a physio, rehab specialist, strength conditioning coach, combo of all? I mean, when people ask me,
all of the
right, when people ask me, I tell them you're just a genius.
No, not at all. I started off as an athletic trainer and then moved into the physical therapy field, and then met Paul C.H.E.K, and from the C.H.E.K Institute, and my life was turned upside down. And with him, if I was going to be the most successful trainer, therapist, coach, whatever you want to label, that I was going to have to know quite a bit about the human being. And the human being, it's not just a physical structure, it's an emotional, mental, spiritual being. So that brings in all of the nutrition and the diet and the lifestyle and the psyche of everything. So I just threw myself into it, and I just kept absorbing and trying to learn from the best people that I could find.
When did you get interested in the field, and kind of what drove you towards it, or what attracted you to it?
That's easy. I was a junior in high school, and I lived, ate, breathed basketball. I didn't care about anything other than basketball. And I got injured a few weeks before the playoffs, and I sprained my ankle really bad. And I had a physical therapist that rehabbed me and got me to be able to play in the playoffs. And I'll just never forget that grateful feeling and gratitude I had toward this person. And I thought, I like athletics, and my favorite classes at that time were more in the biology field. And so I thought, I want to do something in the medical profession. And I enrolled in a university of North Dakota, and I got my degree in athletic training. And, being exposed to athletes all the time, I realized that there was more out there than just the athletes. So then I went on to physical therapy school. And from there, it just kind of blossomed.
Are you from the Dakotas?
I am from North Dakota, yes.
Ooh, not much golf season up there, is there?
No, and that's why I never, up there, golf was not on the table because the season is so short. But I did play once, and I remembered that I loved it. And I thought to myself, I am not going to pick up this sport until I have time and I'm living in a warm climate. So I waited until 2001 to buy my first set of golf clubs, and I was hooked like you couldn't believe. I was obsessed with it.
How did you get into golf? Was there a parent, family member, a good friend, or did you?
Not at all. My first residence in Fort Lauderdale was on a golf course, so I would jog and I would bike and I would walk my dog on the golf course. And I just kept thinking to myself, I live on a golf course, why not get some golf clubs? And I did, and I'll never forget the feeling that I had, because all my life, I was never the best at the sport that I played, but I could play anything. I could pick up a tennis racket and I could go ahead, hit balls. I could throw a football. I had a great arm. I could play baseball. But I'll never forget, picking up a golf club for the first time. It was the most humbling experience I had ever had. And I think that's what, because of my personality, that's what drove me just to fall in love with the game, because I was my own worst enemy.
Were you, because of your athletic ability, I mean, you had a well-rounded sports background. Did you have the mentality of, I can learn this by myself, and just beat the hell out of yourself and grind away until you realize, hey, maybe I should go seek some advice?
No, not at all. I was very diligent about this from the get-go, and I think it took me maybe a week before I was seeking out my first teaching professional, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of lessons since then. I love learning from different teaching pros.
Mm-hmm.
I've been finding as I'm getting older that a lot of them really are saying the same thing. They just say it differently, and it's how they communicate to their student. So I've found that seeking out different teaching professionals has actually helped me. People think, it's going to mess you up. You got too many things, and now I see it differently. I see it that really people are saying similar things. They just have a different teaching style.
Right. When I was writing the theory that I had for golf instruction, one part of it was communication, and did some research on Dr. Howard Gardner up in Harvard, and he was evidently, I guess he's still considered one of the world leaders on intelligence levels, and that doesn't mean how smart somebody is, it just means how they comprehend information. I think he devised 7 or 8 ways that people do it: spatial and analytical, and on and on and on. But I agree with that 100%, because if you're teaching somebody, and you know this because you work with people in your clinic, and you say something in a way that they can't comprehend, they're almost always going to nod because you're the expert, right? And they're there to hear from you, but it might not be sinking in. And I equate it to speaking Spanish to somebody who's French, or French to somebody who's English.
Correct.
Yeah, but if you're
and that's one thing that I can always say that I feel that I have excelled at, and that is the ability to be able to communicate and coach my client.
Mm-hmm.
I don't proclaim to be the best therapist or the smarter, but I have a good ability to coach, and I think that's where my success has come.
Do you think part of it's also your ability to cross disciplines?
Sure. Having an open mind between, I've worked with some amazing chiropractors, osteopaths, physical therapists, trainers, massage therapists, occupational therapists. Paul C.H.E.K was a massage therapist. He didn't even have a degree. So that opened my mind, that you don't have to learn from someone that has a PhD, and the PhD is just a piece of paper. It's really the clinical. I say this all the time. We had to do a thesis for my master's degree, and I hated it. I hated the research part of it. One of my instructors was an amazing clinician, and he had people that would drive in from all around the Midwest to be treated by him. His name was Stephen Clark, and he did fascial therapy, which this is back in 1995 or 6, I think it was. And I didn't even know what really fascia was at that time. And I said to Mr. Clark one time, I said, "Why do you get people better?" And he said, "Dan, I don't know." He said, "They sometimes cry on my table. They get angry. They have emotional releases. I let them do that. I'm a vessel. I'm there. I listen, and they get better." And so that really started opening my mind to how the human body is very difficult to research. You can't put the human being in a petri dish. So when I met Paul C.H.E.K, and with no formal education at all, and this man blew my mind with his wisdom of the body, I just thought, well, okay, I want to learn from people that get results, not from people that write books. That was just my attitude.
I think that, would you say the internet has made that possible, where you can find people who maybe don't have the letters in front of their name, but are extremely knowledgeable?
Yes, and then you also have to take that with a grain of sand too, because I see a lot of people out there that they have such a huge social media presence. It makes me wonder when do they actually treat clients
mm-hmm.
or train people? So it can be a little bit misleading sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I found that especially in the social media, some of the best people I've come across over the years, and you for one, and a number of others who are hoping to have on the show. Let's say the mainstream doesn't know about you because you've been so busy learning and helping people and everything else that, okay, self-promotion falls way, way down on the list of things to do.
Correct. Yeah, there was just a time span there where I didn't do any social media. I couldn't. I didn't have the time, and nor did I want to, nor did I need to.
Mm-hmm.
Now that has changed a little bit because, as you know, I host Dr. Guy VOYER for continuing education courses here in Fort Lauderdale. So, fortunately and unfortunately, social media is a big platform to get that information out there.
Let me jump back real quick to your golf, because
Sure.
I think everybody can associate with this. Is what can you describe anything that when you got the bug that just made you dive 100% into golf? Because you kind of see it where people dabble in golf like you do. You saw it, or you might have played once when you were a kid, and it wasn't until you got to a warm area. But usually once people do it a couple of times, you're like, that's it, I'm hooked. And I always ask people, because I'm just curious, like, what's the hook? Why are you so into golf?
What the crazy hook for me was, is I had such a killer slice the first few weeks that I had golf clubs in my hand. I literally had to be careful with people on the range because I could literally hit the person next to me. And I just thought to myself, I'm way too athletic. And, I would see the people around me that didn't have near the athleticism that I had, and they were killing the ball straight and, commanding draws and fades. And I just thought to myself, I can't let this game conquer me. I'm not going to give up. And I think that just comes back to my attitude of if I put my mind to something, I just get it done. And so I just think I think it was that humbling experience of being an athlete. And then also too, the second thing is man, you are on, I had some fortunate ability to be able to play some of the greatest golf courses in the world, and you are walking on the most beautiful real estate on the planet, and you're playing a game. And that also was a spiritual awakening for me too. I always tell people that I've had some of my most spiritual experiences on a golf course and not in any church or something like that, because you're out there by yourself, you're 4 hours, and you're playing against the worst enemy on the planet, yourself. Mm-hmm. And you have to learn to control and manage. And, golf is just that crazy game. One bad thought comes into your head, and the next thing you know is producing itself in your golf swing.
Yeah, it's like an avalanche. I can speak to that.
It's a total avalanche.
It
totally is.
I remember listening to one of Paul's, I don't know if it was a YouTube video or lecture or whatever it was, but he was talking about sugar and how it should be, it's as addictive as a class 1 narcotic. And maybe we could get golf to be classified as the same.
I think so too.
Tell us a story. I know a little bit of it just from knowing you and talking to you, but tell us the story about combining your two passions when you talked to Paul, when you were doing your clinical work and then, your golf work, and then how you got into all the things that you've done with golf.
Well, when I had graduated, when I finished my formal education, I had the background to work with, all sorts of people, and then throwing myself into the C.H.E.K Institute and learning as much as I possibly could. I took every single class that Paul ever taught, and then I became one of his senior faculty members. So I had a really wide range of ability to work with many different clients, everything from back pain to eating disorders to pelvic pain to headaches. I mean, just, all sorts of stuff. And I noticed as I was getting older that if I looked at my schedule and I had a golfer on my schedule, I couldn't wait to get to work that day because it was something that I was learning to be very passionate about. And of course you can talk golf, the whole time and compare notes and et cetera. And so at that time I was doing quite a bit of meditation work, and I was on the beach, and I remember kind of being a little bit disenfranchised with my career at that time. And I was on the beach, and it just hit me. It hit me out of the blue. It was like, okay, Dan, you know a little bit about the human body? Yes. You love the game of golf? Yes. So why not become known as the golf fitness and therapy expert? And then it dawned on me that Paul had told me this before. He said, if you're going to be successful at something, put your focus on 1 to 3 areas, not 50 areas. And he says that he used the analogy, if you do that, you're like a sprinkler head spraying your energy everywhere. Whereas if you focus in on 1 or 2 aspects of what you really love to do, then it will produce produce the benefits that you want. And that's what I did. And from that point on, I just gobbled up anything I could do with golf, whether it was Titleist or Back to Golf or you name any of the golf stuff out there, I've taken.
I remember the first time I heard of Paul C.H.E.K, and I think it was around 01, 02. If you remember, I don't know, you might because it's your industry, but Fit TV had a show called Art of the Athlete where Gabby Reese was the host. Did you ever catch that?
No, but I know very much about that because I remember Gabby was one of his clients. So yeah.
Right, and so she would go around for just a real quick let everyone know. She would go around and spend time with athletes in all different sports and go over their routines and what they do and what they eat and how they train and so on. I mean, she had Chris Chelios, the hockey player. Ryan Moore was the golfer.
Sure.
Her husband, Laird Hamilton, for those of you who don't know. So she was asking him about his diet, and he said, I eat whatever Mr. C.H.E.K tells me to eat. And I was fairly well versed for an amateur guy not in that field. And I'm like, I thought I was pretty good. Who the hell is Mr. C.H.E.K? And I pulled his website up, and I just said, holy shit, this guy is crazy. I mean, crazy good.
By the way, Paul to this day says that Laird Hamilton was the greatest or the most
structurally
incredible
balanced,
athlete
right?
he's ever worked with.
Yeah,
absolutely. You must be to ride those big waves.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, the C.H.E.K Institute is, Dan, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's out in San Diego?
Yeah, its hub is in Southern California, yeah.
So let me ask...
Around San Diego County.
So let me ask you this. At the time that you were going there, and I'm not trying to date you by any means, so you went to... Your education was in the traditional route,
yes.
College, university, got your master's.
Well, yes and no. Fortunately, the school that I went to for physical therapy was osteopath based, so it opened my eyes to some different things. But yes, for the most part, traditional.
So at that time, the C.H.E.K Institute, even today, it's not very well known, and hopefully the listeners go and Google C.H.E.K Institute and Paul C.H.E.K. But I mean, this was going back again. I'm not going to date you, but when you were younger, coming out of school, and it's not like holistic things were just approaching or getting into the mainstream like they are now. So what drove you to seek out something that was maybe considered radical or against the mainstream, or, you fill in the blank, but was it just a curiosity or just the desire to learn more, and what you were reading, seeing, hearing sounded worthy?
It was, it was all of that. And my very first experience with Paul, I'll never forget. I was in a room. I had moved to Florida. I didn't like what was being offered for physical therapy. I started working in some gyms, was very successful because of my physical therapy background, but found that I wanted more. And I'll never forget, happened to be in New York, and we were in this huge room, and it was a fitness conference that I decided to go to, and I highlighted everything on the list that had the word functional training by it. And I remember highlighted, I think, 3 things from Paul and 1 thing from like Juan Carlos Santana or something like that. I can't remember who else was on there. And the first class I went to was Paul's, and we were in this huge room, and must have been 50, 60 people, and we all were sitting. There was all these Swiss balls around the room, and a lot of us were sitting on the Swiss balls. And I'll never forget, I was smack dab in the middle of the room, and this short, bald-headed guy walks up on stage, ripped, and he starts talking with this high-pitched, kind of squeaky, annoying voice. And he says, "Who in here are trainers?" And because I was the high and mighty physical therapist, I sat on my ball with my arms crossed, and you could tell, I'm sure if you looked at me, the negative attitude that was coming out of my body, because, I felt that I was above these people. And he's looking dead at me. And when I didn't raise my hand, he goes, "Well, what are you?" And I said, "I'm a physical therapist." And Paul goes, "Well, where are all your little buddies at?" And I thought, oh, this guy's an ass. And if I would have been probably sitting by the door, I would have got up and walked out. But I wasn't about to get up off the ball and walk through the crowd of students. So I sat there. And within 5 minutes, the man totally had me hook, line, and sinker. I thought, you know what? In these 5 minutes, I wish my physical therapy school would have told me this or taught me this. Mm-hmm. And it just opened the floodgates for me. And I just threw myself in head first like I do everything else. That's how it happened.
It's such a vast system. There's so many parts to check. He's got nutrition, spiritual, physical. He's got the sports stuff. Yep. The golf. He wrote that golf biomechanics manual. Did you focus on one in particular, or did you become involved in all of them?
I became involved in all of it. I realized that the human spirit moves faster than the physical. The spiritual, emotional, mental part of the human being can change very quickly. The physical being takes a little bit longer to change. So I threw myself into all of it and had to do quite a bit of work on myself as well. And I dabbled in all of it. But it also was not my comfort level. My comfort level was still in the physical aspect of the human body, whether it was manual therapy or exercise. And then, I treated every client the same. I mean, they all had to fill out paperwork, and I had to know about their nutrition and their lifestyle and stuff like that. And I did that for many years. And then I met Dr. Guy VOYER, and then my life was turned upside down again, because he was such a master at the physical aspect of the human being, and his stuff was so powerful that when I started implementing it, I noticed that I got results almost instantaneously. So when I got the instant results, then I had a captive audience, and I was more able to dish out some of the other aspects of health. So I would say today I probably, of course I take a care in what my clients eat, drink, how they think, etc. But I would say that I spend more like 80% of the time in the physical part of the human being and not the emotional, mental, spiritual.
Any particular reason for that? Or is it just the the progression of your learning and your practice and career?
I just think it's because of the amount of time that I had devoted, the amount of my own personal energy. And again, the fact that if I did this, and this, I knew that I could help my client with their hip pain. Whereas if I was going to go the other route, it would take longer. So it was just more of an efficiency type of attitude. And then I had surrounded myself with some employees that really were passionate about doing the emotional, mental, spiritual work. And so I just referred them to that person.
What did you learn most from being a CHEK faculty member?
What did I learn most? That easily. I mean, when I came into the CHEK family, I just looked at the human being as this physical slab of meat, and I didn't really realize that there was more to us than what we can see. That was probably the biggest eye opener for me.
Was there?
The biggest thing was probably the impact on the nutrition aspect of a person. I mean, Eugene Sandow, who is known as the father of bodybuilding, said back in the late 1800s, you can't have healthy muscles without first having healthy organs and healthy glands. And when I came across that, it was pretty profound.
Let me, just to divert, not to get off topic too far, but the especially for golfers, because they're outside so much, the theory that I had on skin, and so many people are lathering themselves with sunblock, and so the negative side I see is, okay, it blocks vitamin D absorption from the sun, which you need, right? But the other thought I had was it's if you have poor nutrition, it's like building a house. I'll go to an extreme with balsa wood. In other words, it's never going to stand. It's going to be deteriorated really quick. So if you're eating shit food, your skin's going to take a beating because it's not structurally sound to take on the demands of the environment, i.e. the sun. Is that you're the expert? Is that viable theory that I have, or is it?
I agree 100%. I personally rarely use any sort of sunscreen, and I'm outside all the time. And if I do use it, it's some, very low chemical type of sunscreen. So I firmly believe that, like you said, I firmly believe that a lot of the skin cancers are because of the poor foundation, i.e. the nutrition and lifestyle, and also all of these chemicals that people are putting on their skin.
Yeah, I mean, outside of, let's say you're from Ireland and you're very fair complected, you really don't have a choice. Your biology, your genetics you're not predisposed to be in the sun. So right. I could see something there, but for the most people, I'm like, you're just lathering yourself in that stuff and you're not doing yourself any good. Oh, what do you know? You're into that crazy shit. Was there anything that you didn't agree with in the CHEK system, or that you now may believe wasn't quite right back of what was being taught then?
No, I really think that everything was good, and I benefited from it. And Paul always said, don't believe a thing that I tell you until you try it for yourself. So, did he have some really, out there ideas and methods, singing songs and stuff like that, which just is not my personality, that I didn't get into? Yeah, of course. But for the most part, it was really his philosophy was really kind of simple. If you break it down, what he calls the last 4 doctors you will ever need, and that's Dr. Diet. That's what we put in our mouth, and that's what we can get into this whole thing about the John Daly not being allowed to have the golf cart. I mean, that drives me. I agree with the Royal and Ancient. He shouldn't have one, but that's another point. But so yeah, Dr. Diet, what you put in your mouth. Dr. Quiet, that is your repair time. That is, whether it's sleep or meditation, because your body physically repairs itself and heals itself when you're sleeping. And we used to average 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. And now the average American is like 6, if you're lucky, 4 to 6. And then you have Dr. Movement, which is your exercise and how you move your body. And knowing that exercise can also be another form of stress to the human body, because at the cellular level, you have trillions of cells in your body. Your cells don't know the difference between doing too much CrossFit or having a divorce or a financial crisis. It's still the release of cortisol. It's still the release of stress hormones. So if you don't have your exercise in check and balance with your lifestyle factors, exercise is a detriment to your body. And I see that all the time. And then the fourth doctor is Dr. Happiness. And I think this is one that we miss the most. What makes you happy? And when you ask people this question, it's interesting. Most people will say something that requires them to expend energy. Running is what makes me happy. Biking is what makes me happy. Swimming, it'll be something where they're catabolic, where they're breaking themselves down. Very few people will say, doing art, sitting on the floor with my dog, listening to music. So what makes you happy is also extremely important. So when you take those 4 doctors, and Paul says these are the last 4 doctors you'll never need. If you visit these 4 doctors, you don't need the doctor in the white coat. Mm-hmm. So his philosophy to me just made sense. It was the basic rhythms of a human being and what we need to give our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at and you talk to people, whenever what were the big 3? Loss of a relationship, death, and loss of a job. I mean, when people, those are like some of the 3 biggest shocks to your system that a human being can have, and it's within, I think it's 5 to 7 days of that, most people will get sick, and it's like, okay, what just happened? It's like, oh, well, your nervous system's in complete chaos right now. It's a reaction. It's going to happen, and they're like, you're full of shit. I'm like, okay, you're sick, aren't you? Yeah, I'm a firm believer. In fact, well, me having shingles lately, I was talking to Justin, our buddy in Charleston. Yeah. And he was telling me how he was doing a number of years ago, he was on a heavy squat program, like max, and then 110% of 1 rep max and so on. He was really trying to build that, and he got shingles. And he wore a system out, and then he got get off the heavy squatting, and sure enough, it went away in a short period of time. Unlike me, that suffered for weeks. But anyway,
the way he described it was very beautiful. It was like the body is a big funnel, and we have all of these stressors and chemical stress, electromagnetic stress. I mean, we're being bombarded, physical stress, nutritional stress, emotional stress, and as the stress levels increase in the body, the capacity for exercise decreases. So one of the things that I had the biggest challenge with when dealing with people using the C.H.E.K philosophy was actually taking exercise away from them. They were coming to me to have the shit beat out of them, which is what most clients do when they hire a trainer. And it was very difficult for me to explain this rationale of why you can't run 100 miles a week and why your body's breaking down. And so, but that's a very powerful thing. I mean, the last 3 years of my life have been very stressful with working with who I was working with and taking care of someone that all of a sudden needed 24/7 care, and I started feeling the detriment to my body because I was not able to give it the 4 doctors that it needed.
What, as we're on that topic, what do you think of the things that measure those things now, like the Oura Ring, the hoop, the band people wear, so they can measure things like heart rate variability, so they know if, hey, I didn't recover enough while I was sleeping, so maybe I should take a day off or do something like yoga instead of lifting.
Pete, I mean, I think that technology is great. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's also bombarding our body with more electromagnetic stress. I'll never forget. I got the very first iWatch that came out. And you know how it taps you, I don't know if you have one, but if you had a call or a text message, it would tap you on the wrist so you knew you had a message. And I can remember taking my iWatch off and treating a patient, and all of a sudden I feel like somebody's tapping my wrist, and I think, oh, I got a message. I look down at my watch, and I'm not even wearing it. I think, okay, this is weird. I don't. And then I started getting a little red mark where the face sat on my wrist, and I thought, okay, I have the cell phone around me enough. I do not need to wear the cell phone on my wrist.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold it to somebody, and I've never gone back. And so I think that technology is great. Like, my friend that has propensity for AFib, the iWatch now tells you when you're in AFib. I mean, so it's got some great tools, but it also is electromagnetic stress. Which I don't think is good for the body and the amount of doses that's happening nowadays.
Yeah, with the blue lights on the phone and the computer and TVs and all that stuff.
Yes.
I mean, they're even coming out with glasses now you can wear to cut that down.
The red kind of tinted glasses.
Have you tried those at all?
I have not, but I have recommended them to clients that, feel that they need to be on their iPad 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's going to be interesting coming out with the new 5G. There's a lot of people out screaming about how the 5G is going to be a big detriment to our health.
That's why I go to guys like you. Tell me what to do and what not to do. I'm not going to sit there and trial and error that stuff. Let me ask you about something that's probably, obviously it's more mainstream than the C.H.E.K Institute.
Sure.
TPI, Titleist Performance Institute. If you're a golfer and you don't know what it is, you've been living under a rock for too long. So how long have you been associated with them?
Jeez. Probably since the middle of 2005.
Jeez, that's
somewhere around there.
Long, eh?
I'm old, man. TPI was great. Greg Rose and Dave Phillips, incredible people, and Greg Rose is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life, and been very good to me. And his program is wonderful. It's geared to the masses. It's helpful. It's easy to follow. You can put some information in a website and it spits out some exercises for you. And so I think he's done a great thing with taking some really good knowledge and making it available to everyone. Now, does it help everyone? No, because it is based like that. But for the most part, he's built a really incredible company, and they're now branching out. I don't know if you know, into soccer, into baseball, into tennis.
Yeah, I heard that.
So, yeah, Greg is kind of taking the entire sporting world by storm. He's an incredible businessman.
Yeah, Titleist seems to have a knack for getting guys like that. I mean, Scotty Cameron, and I think he does some very good work. And I'm not saying this to knock him, but he's mastered the art. I call it the Starbucks effect. I mean, when you can sell a putter for $10,000, that's what I consider the Starbucks effect, where you get a 25-cent cup of coffee you sell for 10 or 6 or whatever it is.
Yes.
But the Titleist seems to find those guys that can do that, and I mean, more power to them. And again, I'm not saying.
And you probably know this, but I have a program on my TPI.
Yeah,
website.
I was just going to say you did an online course for them on Aldoa, didn't you?
Yes, I'm supposed to be doing one for baseball coming up here in the very near future, and possibly tennis. So
anyone listening, go to Dan's website. We'll give it to you at the end. It'll be in the show notes and all the links and everything else. And check out that Aldoa class he did. You can get it online, and we're going to get into Aldoa here shortly.
Sure.
What have you found most interesting about and what you've learned with the TPI system that maybe you didn't get in your education or at the C.H.E.K Institute, or something different?
Well, I'm going to say this very, very generally. It's how you could take a philosophy, or a group of exercise or something like that, and make it detailed toward a specific sport. Prior to TPI and prior to the C.H.E.K golf biomechanic, it never really dawned on me to do sport specific training. When I played sports, we just did everything, and we never, I never trained specifically for basketball. I can remember being an idiot in my most important year of basketball. I go out for cross country, thinking that running cross country was going to make me in great shape for basketball. And I'll never forget that first practice. My buddies that just played basketball ran circles around me, and I couldn't figure out why I was sucking air, because it was a totally different energy system. So I think the thing with Titleist was just how, if you really want to get involved with a specific sport, you can do that.
Yeah, you've seen a lot more of that, right? I mean, in your industry, where people are going sport specific.
They are, and I think it can be overdone. I think, again, at the end of the day, and what I really liked what Titleist did was their junior track, where their goal is to create an athlete first, and then, at the age of 13, 14, 15, maybe even 16, then start to specialize and know your sport. If you want to be a gymnast, you better do it very young. If you want to be a dancer, you better do it very young. If you want to be a diver, you better do it very young. But if you want to be a golfer, I mean, Padraig Harrington didn't win his first tournament until he was in his 30s, right? I mean, so golf is considered what's called a long-term athletic development sport because it's so unique. I've always told parents this. I don't care how good Johnny or Susie is at the age of 12 or 10 before they go into puberty. Let's see what happens after, because their body changes, and golf is a unique sport, very unique.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's a book, you're probably familiar with it, Periodization and Methodology of Training. Dr. Greg Haff. Tudor Bompa, yeah.
Oh, Craig Haff, okay.
Yeah, well, they wrote it together. When
I
think Doc Haff was at West Virginia University, and he got together with Tudor. But I found Tudor from Charles Poliquin, and was reading up on his stuff, and that book is amazing when it talks about training of kids, and then how to peak at certain times, off season, preseason, preseason, in season, postseason, how to do your training so you're peaking at the perfect times. And I think that came from kind of like bodybuilding Olympics, didn't it? And then people have been adapting it to their sport specific.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff came from the Eastern Bloc countries.
Bulgaria, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Russia.
Istvan Bali was one big one with long-term athletic development. So that was one of my favorite classes with TPI, was the junior track and how to work with kids. I found it fantastic.
Yeah, I've reached out Dr. Greg Haff. I think he's in Australia now, and I emailed him, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to be on the show. Just got to figure out when we're going to do it halfway around the world." But that would be
not on the
same
cool. time zone.
No, I said, "Okay, you're the guest. I'll get up. You tell me when." But yeah, that would be a pretty cool one. But let's get into some pretty cool stuff on training and the PGA Tour, because I got to ask you, the last time I was in Fort Lauderdale at your office, and I think it was in May, I was getting treated by you and Dr. Guy VOYER. I noticed you had a 2019 Masters flag on the wall, signed by champion Mr. Tiger Woods. I got to ask you, and I've been dying to ask you this: did you work with him?
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't confirm or deny that. I just HIPAA rules and non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that just don't allow me to be able to answer any questions regarding that. But yes, the flag is on my wall.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool piece of artwork you got there. I think it's a one of a kind.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of rumors circulating, but I understand those non-disclosure. I'm not going to press you on it, but anyone out there?
I appreciate that.
So. You've been working on the PGA Tour or with a lot of the players, some of the top players in the world, for how many years?
Last year I did 16 tournaments. The year before I did a few. This year I have done none. So last year was my big brunt of my work. And this year I've seen a couple of the players prior to like the Masters and things like that. So it's kind of peaked, and now it's going back down again. And part of that is my doing. I needed to step away, like I said, and let myself regenerate. I knew I was heading in the wrong direction with my own health and my own physical and mental well-being. So yeah, it's people think, oh, it's so glamorous. I'm like, no, it's not. it's not fun to be away from home all the time and to be on the road. So it does take a toll, but I loved it. I loved being submerged in it for a full year, and I can say I've been there and done that.
You've been around the best in the world. So what do you notice between, let's say, that the players at the most elite level, and those who are good, but maybe they're competing, they're in the top 10, or they haven't won yet. What did you see, or if you did, that might separate those elite players from those guys who are not there? Let's say they're struggling to keep their card. Is it their training? Is it what they eat? Is it talent level, mindset? I mean, what's your opinion on that? I mean, you got a front row seat.
Well, yeah, that's varied. One particular person I can think of, he's just so incredibly talented that, he could train and practice the week before a tournament and potentially go out and win it. And then another person I can think of worked his hind end off, was, always in the gym, always on the range, always putting his time in, always being careful with what he ate. So I think, Pete, that there's a big variation there. Let's just face it. There are some people that are born that are just absolutely a God-given talent. And there are some people that are not born that way. They go out and they earn it. And don't get me wrong, even the people that I say that are born that way, they still have put in their time and their hours. It's just that they might not have to do as much as their competitor.
Mm-hmm. What's the best thing about working with PGA Tour pros, the most elite golfers that there are?
Ooh, just the professionalism, the dedication to their craft. Most of them are willing to do whatever it takes to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's so different than when at times when I was just a physical therapist working in an outpatient orthopedic clinic and getting workman comp patients that obviously don't want to go back to work and find any means they can not to get better. So that's probably the most joyful part of it is the professionalism.
Was there any, outside of the travel and being away from home, throwing you out of your routine, taking away from your practice, was there a downside at all?
Yeah, I didn't get to play golf. I'm surrounded. It's like that saying, water everywhere, not a drop to drink.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surrounded by golf, and I just never really had time to play myself, even though I wanted to desperately.
Let me ask you this question. When I was still playing, I was working to get up to the big ranks. A friend of mine he was at, I think, then the Nationwide. And we'd come home, his caddy lived in the area, and we'd all play, and his caddy wasn't playing very good. And they went on about a 6-week road trip, all and playing in the events. And his caddy came home.
Sure.
Obviously, he didn't play or hit balls on the road. But next thing we know, he's
right.
breaking 80 like it's a piece of cake. What the hell happened? He goes, hey, you're looking at some of the best swings in the world every single day. It just kind of happens. So did you find out that your game or your swing or your short game or your putting got any better just rubbing shoulders with
my
elite?
God, yes. By osmosis,
mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
pretty cool, isn't it?
When you're around, the best players in the world watching, and I'm a very much a visual person, so watching that definitely helped me.
What's not to get off topic. What's kind of your pitfalls of your swing or your whatever part of your game is? I mean, what seemed to help you get you out of a funk?
I have the dreaded early extension, and as a matter of fact, another person I spent some time with is Ben Crane, and we played golf a few weeks ago, and he gave me some tips to get rid of it. So I think I'm going down the right path.
Is he as crazy and goofy as he is in his videos?
He is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. Absolutely. He's funny and he's great.
I'm sure a lot of people are waiting for him to resume that series that he had.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Let's get back to the so can you tell us kind of what a typical day at a tour event was like for you? Or I'm sure you've been at major championships with some of the players you worked with.
Sure. Depending on the tee time of the person you're working for, but if they had early, it could be up at 4 a.m. and to the gym, and then a little bit of therapy after, or sometimes therapy before, even the gym and therapy after, and then the golfer would usually take off to warm up. A lot of times I would take a quick nap. And then for me, I genuinely love to watch golf, so I was either following on the golf course, or I would stay and watch it on TV, just depended. But I always watched. And then when they're done with their round, there's the post round treatment and exercise, which I think is really the most important piece that I think a lot of golfers miss, is what they do when they finish, and go to bed and do the whole thing all over again the next day.
Is obviously the tour nowadays has a fitness trailer. Did you utilize that, or did some of the players you work with want it to be more private and you had to do it, let's say, in a house or in a hotel room?
It was more private. I would say usually more private. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Players today they're training more than ever, right?
Yes.
When a golfer comes to you, whether they're a PGA Pro or they're your average Joe, what's the most common thing that you see them that they're doing that is wrong?
Well, unfortunately, all sports have gone down this road, Pete, is that they've become such a huge money-generating monster. I mean, look at the amount of basketball games these people play nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of hockey games, the amount of baseball games. I mean, look at the golf schedule now. There's never any time off. So I really think between the constant travel, crossing time zones, and unfortunately, if you're not one of the big names, you need to play more events to get, to keep your points, to keep your card, etc. So you're stuck with playing tournaments almost every week. If you have to play in the Pro-Am, and then you have the practice rounds, and then you have all the training on top of that. And Dr. VOYER taught me something that I think was a little bit of a mind opener for me. And he said, you have to know your purpose. Is your purpose to win? And if your purpose is to win, you have to understand that what you are doing is damaging your body. You are going to wake up when you retire, and you are going to most likely be in constant orthopedic pain, because the body is not designed to have a schedule like that. If your desire is to feel better, then your training approach is different. So it's really what is your goal? If your goal is to win, man, you're all in. You're going at it, balls out. If your goal is just to feel better, then you got a completely different program again. Mm-hmm. So we are not designed to do what sports are requiring us to do today. It's just not possible.
Anything surprises you about therapy or golf training in today's world?
Yeah, I don't know where all of this, slipping tires and Olympic lifting and all. I don't know. I don't know if CrossFit kind of took over. I just think that people, again, if you are going to Olympic lift, compressing your joints, if you're going to go out and hit 1,000 golf balls a day, compressing your joints, you have to understand that your body is not going to last. These are joints. Joints wear out after a while, and so I think what surprises me the most is just the amount of work that a lot of these top athletes are putting into their craft without having any recovery and repair time. And you see that at the end of last year, at the end of the season, it was like total carnage. I mean, people were injured left and right. I mean, and that's going to happen. There's no way to stop that. I mean, there are some things you could do that we'll get into, but I think that's one of the biggest things that surprises me is the lack of commitment to repair and to regenerate.
I was guilty of that. I mean, I treated it like a full-time job where I was 12 hours a day. Get up in the morning, you go train, and then you stretch. So 2 hours there, then go hit balls for 2 hours, 3 hours. Then you go eat lunch. Then you go play 18. Then you go back, you work on whatever, wedge, chipping, and oh, shit, let me go hit some more drivers because I didn't like the way it felt on 10. And it's just nonstop.
Sure.
And now I'm, everyone, I tell people I'm 100% healthier than I was back then. Well, you're going to go back and play? You're 3 years away from the senior tour. I said, no. Okay, why not? Because I'm not paying Dan Hellman. Not that I wouldn't, don't get me wrong. I said, I'm not paying Dan Hellman to travel with me 30 weeks a year. And I'm sure he doesn't want to do it. That's why.
No.
My days of
and
7 days a week
as a professional athlete, as a professional athlete, you have that mentality that if I'm not doing it, my competitor is. And so that keeps you going.
That's something that I still struggle with, that I haven't learned it. And I say that being as humble as possible because I still have that push whether I'm doing your exercises that you gave me or something, and sometimes I'll push a little too much and I have to email you or text you, hey, Dan, I got to take 10 days off because I did this. And I know you're thinking, Jesus Christ, Pete, what'd you do now? But it's that athlete mentality. You did it so long, you're just going to push the envelope. But when your body gets older,
there's a reason they're professional. There's a reason they're professional athletes is because all professional athletes have an addictive personality, and they think that more is better. Take one vitamin A a day. Well, I took 6. 6 has got to be better. No, it's not.
I did that with the magnesium. After I read one of Polikin's articles that athletes are always low in magnesium. Okay, I'll take 500 milligrams. Wow, I feel.
How bad a diarrhea?
Yeah, well, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm sleeping great. I feel great. Oh, well, 500 is good. Let me take 750. Okay, so something's not right. Well, let me take 1,000. One day we were playing golf. I had to go back to the turn 3 times.
Sure. You overdid it, man. Your body will tell you.
You mentioned the Olympic lifting, and you're right. That has become a huge thing, deadlifts in particular. And you and I talked about that because of my condition. I'm not allowed to deadlift, and I haven't. But do you think that that's due to the ground reaction force that everyone's talking about now and pushing off the ground, and that's the easiest, best way to train for it, and all the modern science, so to speak, is telling everyone that's what they need to do?
That and the Tiger effect. Here's a guy that, was the first person to really look like an athlete and was the most dominant golfer on the face of the planet. And so I think all of that just compounded itself, and The fitness craze took the golfers by storm, and I think it's a combination of all of that.
Well, let me ask you your thoughts real quick on not to get off training, but on the swing and swing theory. You're an avid golfer, so I'm sure you're up to speed on the modern day what everyone's going to, where it's keeping the head still, center pivot versus a small lateral shift. As far as the body goes, is what your opinion is there one that's better than the other? Is it dependent on the person's, let's say, their pelvic girdle and their hip structure, chest girth, all those things? Is from your side of the perspective?
I think I look at it a little bit differently, and I can't comment on between those two different philosophies of the swing because that's not my expertise. But for me, the way I look at golf is so we have the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine. The lumbar spine, the facet joints are vertical. There is maybe a maximum of 3 to 15 degrees at most. I would say it's probably closer to the single digit numbers of rotation at the lumbar spine. As you move up to the thoracic spine, you have the facet joints go more into a horizontal plane. So now we have this amazing, and they call it a thoracic cage. And the reason why they call it a cage is because the ribs and stuff like that may protect our organs. But that is where we start to see a lot of rotation. And at the level of T8, the axis of rotation goes smack dab through the middle of the vertebral body and the disc. So that is where my maximum amount of rotation is going to occur in my spine, in my thoracic spine. And then as you go up to the cervical spine, now the facet joints are even more horizontal, and that's why we can turn our head 180 degrees. So, and then our hip joints need to be mobile as well. If we have really tight hips, there's a good chance that we're going to try to get some rotation from the lumbar spine. And whenever you try to get rotation from the lumbar spine, nothing good is going to come out of that. So the way I look at it is I want to have my golfer have as much freedom. And for me, the use of myofascial stretching, the use of Eldoa, global postural stretching, and things like that, the purpose is to give freedom to the tissues. It's not necessarily to stretch structure. It's to give freedom to the tissues so that the tissues can glide and slide and do what they need to do. And I think when you do that, you can then, create whatever philosophy or utilize whatever philosophy that you want with the golf swing. The lumbar spine, since it doesn't rotate, the lumbar spine does what we call translation. And the axis of rotation in the lumbar spine is not through the center of the vertebra or the disc. It's actually posterior. So your lumbar spine gets a little bit of what's called a scissoring effect. So you'll see that on people on the transition. When they get to the top of the backswing, there's not a pure rotation that's happening down at the pelvis and the lumbar spine. You see a little bit of a translation toward the target. And that's because that is what the lumbar spine has to do biomechanically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So does that mean that the translation, meaning that the vertebrae and the distance are moving somewhat laterally across one another? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Absolutely. So it's not a rotation. I mean, if you just try to rotate your lumbar spine, you're going to stay back on your right leg, and you're not going to go forward onto your left leg. You're not going to go at the target. It'd be impossible. Mm-hmm. So that's, again, the ground reaction forces. You're driving off if you're a right-handed golfer, you're driving through your right foot, you're driving off the earth, and that translation happens through the lumbar spine. And then hopefully you have nice flexible hips where you can internally and externally rotate your hips, and you have a really free thoracic cage that you can do your rotation. I mean, I think the greatest example is, he's a freak of nature, is Dustin Johnson. If you look at his golf swing in the top of the backswing, his lumbar spine is completely flat. not rotating, but he's got this beautiful rotation in his thoracic cage.
Yeah, he's like Gumby. I sit there.
Yeah.
There's no lordotic curve for those of you who don't know. No arch in the low back. It's like, wow, I'd kill for that.
And although I have had patients that have had a thoracic disc bulge or thoracic disc pathology, the prevalence of a thoracic disc pathology is far less than lumbar. And I don't know if that's because of the protective cage, the way the joints are lined up, or maybe it's because there's less weight on those structures, whereas on the lumbar spine, L5, L5S1, L4, L5, you have a lot more weight compressing on it. I'm not sure why that is.
For anyone that hasn't seen Dan, he if you wanted the GPS, the global postural stretch, that you were on Como Concepts, Chris Como's on the Golf Channel. So
yeah.
Anyone, if you have a way to pull that up, whether it's a DVR or it's recorded or whatever, or just go to YouTube and pull up Como Concepts, you can see Dan talk about the global. Did you do the global GPS on the show, or was that the one on your website?
I did it on the show, but I think that they did it on a separate segment. I'm not sure, but or maybe I did do it on the show. I know I was in episode 2 doing the Eldoa, and I can't remember. Yeah, I think I did the GPS on the show.
Well, people, they just need to go and pull up Como Concepts Dan Hellman on YouTube. It'll pop up, and then go to your website, because I know the one's on the website and then one's on the show. But you can see what Dan's talking about, how to open up your thoracic cage so you can protect your low back. And we're going to, of course, get into that more here very shortly. But you can see exactly the stretches he's talking about and do them. I can't recommend them enough if you want to play pain-free. Now you've been out there in the tour event. There's obviously other trainers and strength coaches and so on. What do you see, if I can ask you this, you don't have to answer, some of your contemporaries doing that just makes you roll your eyes or want to throw up? Is it the 300-pound deadlift?
Yeah, something like that. The little tiny, I hate bands, the little tiny band exercises. I think they're kind of cheesy.
Tell me about it. Well, I think I wrote an article, not to cut you off, but I wrote an article, and I think it's a long time ago, about the strength curve of the muscle versus the strength curve of the band. I mean, there is no curve of the band.
Exactly.
I try to tell people, and they say, no, you're wrong. Okay, go away.
No, exactly. I would say that's probably it. To be honest with you, I didn't, when I was doing it, I really didn't spend or have much time because we were typically in a private setting. I didn't really have time to really focus on what other people were doing. Mm-hmm. So, but the little things that I saw, probably the little band exercises and stuff like that.
Is there anything that you believe in that you're developing, a theory or something like that your contemporaries think is crazy?
I'm not developing a theory. I think that some people don't understand the absolute power of the Eldoa, which again we're going to talk about, and how this particular exercise literally can prolong the life of your joints if you do it on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, I know, it's been poo-pooed many times, and I get the same thing. Show me the research on it. Well, I don't need research on it. I've seen pre and post MRIs, and I just don't want to utilize my time doing a research project. So again, it's the clinical experience of utilizing some of these tools that, because they're not research based, they don't have the outcome base that a lot of the physical therapists and rehab professionals are looking for. They just kind of shrug it off like it's voodoo or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always that there's something that's new but works phenomenally well. The establishment usually shuns it because they don't want to change. They want to keep doing the same thing.
I mean, I just wrote a paper. I don't know when it's going to be out, with Dr. Richard Guyer from the Texas C.H.E.K Institute, and I'll never forget. I wrote up my section of the paper, and then I got an email back from a guy doing who's putting it all together for the journals, and he goes, I need all of your research on this. And I thought, oh crap. So I had to definitely go back and do some digging, because like I said, most of the stuff that I would talk about would be clinically based.
Right. Let's get into the Eldoa Soma therapy, and you incorporate that in the program you have, the Golf Body Pro.
Yep.
So there might be a lot of people out there that don't know, and I know you've probably said this more than 1,000,000 times, but Eldoa is really an acronym, isn't it?
It's a French acronym. I won't even try the French part of it. But when you translate it to English, instead of Eldoa, it's LOADS, LOADS.
Mm-hmm.
And the L is for longitudinal. The O is for osteoarticular, which is just a fancy name for a joint. The OA, sorry, osteoarticular. And the D is decoaptation, which is a fancy name for decompression. And the S, I think a lot of times they say stretching, but I like to put the word strengthening in there because firsthand that doing an Eldoa, to me, it does not resemble stretching at all. It's a lot of work. I call it strengthening.
Yeah, absolutely, because you're moving, passively moving joints so that muscles now have to work to hold them in place.
Well, you're actively.
Yeah.
There's nothing passive about it.
I stand corrected.
That's the beauty.
that shows you who's the expert on the body in this conversation.
There's
who's a golf
nothing passive
instructor.
about that.
No, I can vouch for that one. And Dr. Guy VOYER is your mentor in that, right?
Yeah, he's just this brilliant European osteopath that learned. There was three famous osteopaths, Little John Still and Sutherland, and VOYER learned from all of them. And not only that, he's also a physical therapist. He's also an orthopedic MD. He's got a degree in education. He was on the French judo Olympic team as an alternate, so he knows what it takes to be a high-level athlete. And he's the creator of the Eldoa. He designed it, but he designed it, and just like everything else, he designed it by learning from some of the best people in the field while he was an osteopath student. His goal was to fix back pain, and he wanted to learn, just like I wanted to do everything I could with golf. He learned from everyone that was talking about back pain, and he decided to pull all these different philosophies together, and he created the Eldoa. And the Eldoa is a trademarked technique.
How, before we really dive into Eldoa, how has your program design philosophy changed since working with Guy? And that was a question from Justin in Charleston. He was curious to know that.
Okay. Sure. So in the past, I used to do a lot of my stretching and mobilization prior to the strengthening. I don't do that anymore. I do, as you know, I do some sort of cardio warm-up
mm-hmm.
to elevate the core temperature, to break a sweat. And then I teach what's called a non-articular warm-up, where I don't want to use the word ballistically, you're moving in a controlled fashion to wake up the proprioceptors of the joints and to prepare the tissue for work. And then you go into your strengthening, and this is where, if you want to do your deadlift and your squats and your bench press and whatever you have planned for strengthening that day, you go into that. And then when you finish that, you do your myofascial stretching. So I don't look at stretching muscle anymore, because like I said earlier, the goal of the myofascial stretching and the GPS is to give freedom to the tissue. So after my strengthening workout, I'm sweaty, I'm warm, my core temperature is up. I have the opportune time to now remodel the fascia. And so that's when I do my myofascial stretching. And then the last thing that I do is the Eldoa. And I open up the joint because during my exercise, I compressed the joints.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing anything against gravity, which we are all the time, you're compressing the joints. So the last thing I do before I jump in the shower is to do the Eldoa to open up the joints and to give freedom to the joint space. So my philosophy with what I would call an optimum program or a perfect program has changed dramatically in the order that I would do, whether it's stretching or strengthening, etc.
So it was stretching. You would recommend stretching before you learn the Eldoa to get the body loose.
Yeah, because when you do the Eldoa, you're actually using fascial chains, and if a certain fascial chain is tight and retracted, it's going to be difficult to use that fascial chain then to open up the joint.
And just so people know, can you explain a little bit of what fascia is?
Well, yeah, that's
well, if you can explain it.
Well, no, I can. Just think of it as this. It's really easy. It's the skin of everything. It's the plastic bag of everything. Our entire body is composed of fascia. And actually, in America, Guy says we have the best term for this in our English language because we call it connective tissue. It's connective tissue. It's like a spider web. You can't touch one end of the spider web without the other end of the spider web moving. It's impossible because everything is connected. Now, the reason why this is lost in our anatomy classes is because when I've done 3 cadaver dissections. All 3 cadaver dissections, the anatomist told us to cut the fascia away and throw it in the garbage. So they didn't study fascia. It was just, hey, let's get rid of the fascia so we can see the muscles, the organs, and the glands. Well, fascia covers the muscles, the organs, the glands. And we have different names for the fascia, and that's where people lose the generality of the fascia. So we say the covering of the bone is the periosteum. Well, the periosteum is the fascia. We say the whites of the eyes is the sclera. Well, sclera is a fascia. They'll say the covering of the brain and the spinal cord is the dura mater. Well, dura mater is fascia. The covering of the heart is the pericardium. It's a fascia. The epimysium covering the muscles, it's a fascia. So literally, you are fascia. And without the fascia, you would be a walking water blob. Nothing would take form. It would be impossible. And Dr. Voyer always says that muscle is a stupid piece of meat.
And without
well, it is, but the nervous system begins and ends. It ends in the fascia. There's no connection with the muscle. So fascia is also under a microscope is collagen-filled tubes, and hopefully filled with water. And when you start looking at society and people not drinking water but everything else, a lot of people are dehydrated. And so it's the therapy approach then is to move the liquid through the fascia. And Guy also says that the day the water stops moving in your body is the day you die. And that's true because this liquid is moving through these collagen tubes, and that is life. That is the primary respiratory mechanism, which is called the PRM. So the body is literally breathing without us breathing our normal breathing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the movement. That is the movement of the liquid. That is the movement of the cerebral spinal fluid. So learning Voyer's concepts and the focus on the fascia completely changed my way of looking at a human being and designing and giving exercises and the type of therapy that I did. Because fascia is, I think, the most important structure. And there's so much research now and stuff coming out where they think fascia is like little microcomputers, where it gives us the where fascia literally gives us proprioception and awareness of our body. And so I have a webinar called Pumping versus Foam Rolling, where people, they foam roller themselves so hard where they cause bleeds and they have big bruises all over their body. Well, if you have a bruise, you are bleeding. If you're bleeding, you have scar tissue. And the question is do you want scarred fascia or do you want healthy fascia? So it's a big controversy, but I really think fascia is where a lot of the secrets on unlocking the body's secrets to longevity, a healthy life is in the fascia.
Yeah, because I try to explain it to a lot of people who don't know about it, whether they're students coming in or just in general conversation. And I tried to tell them, I said, the best way I can explain it is that of course, the brain is what sends the message for let's say a spasm muscle to, like, it's safe to release. The body, the structure of the body is okay. You don't have to protect, let's say, a bulged disc by spasms in a certain section of the back. But is it safe to say that the fascia would be the mechanism that notices that, sends a message to the brain that says, hey, this area, it's okay, so you
Sure.
can go ahead and send that message down?
Sure. You have a central pattern and you have a peripheral pattern. The peripheral pattern, which is sending the information to the brain, is the fascia is an extremely important part of that. Important part of that information, and that's where we get our proprioception from. Our awareness of what's going on around us is more of a central pattern with our brain. We're aware of our body, and then the proprioception stuff comes more from a peripheral pattern of all of the receptors, whether they're Golgi tendon organs or muscle spindles or the fascia, that's feeding all the information back to the brain so that we can make a decision.
There's so many people that are walking around dehydrated. Is the one rule I've always gone by is you drink half of your body weight in ounces. Is that enough, or is that a good guide to go by?
That's an okay way to look at it. But if somebody is extremely overweight, I would not tell them that, because they could literally drown themselves. And we can overdo a good thing. So, roughly 2 to 3 liters of water a day is a good, and that's for the average couch potato.
Mm-hmm.
It also depends on your climate. Are you in the desert where, you cannot keep enough water in your body because it's just evaporating out of your body faster than you can put it in? Or are you in a humid climate where, it doesn't evaporate as fast, but it's humid, so you're sweating a lot? It depends on a lot of factors, your exercise level and the climate that you're in.
Like say you're playing golf and it's this time of year in the South or in Florida, and you're obviously going to need more than
you need
two.
to drink some water.
Right.
Absolutely.
I would assume since the fascia is collagen driven, that taking something like the Great Lakes Gelatin or Bulletproof now has their collagen product out. That you recommend something like that on a regular basis?
I'm a big fan of collagen products. Ideally, it would be some sort of bone broth, but that takes a lot of effort
Mm-hmm.
to get the bones and to make what they called in the old days, the Jewish penicillin, the chicken soup, which made you feel really good.
I remember my grandma made it like that from scratch.
Absolutely. I think it is. Some of that stuff is the magic bullet. And, if you don't have the propensity or the time to spend, 5-6 hours in the kitchen, and then you have other products like Great Lakes Gelatin. And like you said, I'm not too versed on the Bulletproof part. I don't know the quality of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I know Great Lakes Gelatin is a good product.
There was Mike from Detroit had sent in a question. He had a shoulder replacement 3 months ago, and he said, any tips on exercises before swinging a club again to get his swing back or allow him to play pain-free?
Yeah. Yes. So he's in Detroit?
Yes.
So for Mike, so the shoulder is several joints. The most important joint to the shoulder, believe it or not, is the shoulder blade. It's actually known as a sesamoid bone. like your kneecap. Without your kneecap, your quadricep would be very, very inefficient. So the scapula is a big sesamoid bone, and it is the absolute most important joint to rehabilitate first. So doing exercises that affect the scapula, the muscles like the rhomboids, the levator, the middle traps, the upper traps, the lower traps, working on muscles like that, making sure that you have freedom of those tissues as well is the most important. And then if he does have a therapist, the next most important joint would be the SCCC joint, the sternoclavicular joint. So that's the joint where the sternum and the clavicle. That's a pivot joint. And without that joint, again, our shoulder doesn't work. And then the third joint that's the most important is the AC joint, the acromioclavicular joint. So that's going to need some work. And the last joint that needs to be addressed is the actual shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, our medicine, when you go to a doctor for shoulder pain, they have a very myopic view for the most part, and they look just right at the shoulder joint. And that's when a lot of times unnecessary surgeries and stuff happen, because they're not addressing the big foundation of the shoulder, which is those other joints. So if he's working with a therapist, I would make sure that therapist addresses the scapula first, the sternoclavicular joint second, the AC joint third, and then start focusing on the glenohumeral joint. And when you focus on the glenohumeral joint, the most important motion to restore first is rotation. Without rotation, you have nothing.
Yeah, he sounds like when someone goes through a surgery, not only do they have to get the strength back, but they have to get the soft tissue, the fascia, the muscles, the tendons, and everything loose again.
Of course. Absolutely.
And from what I've seen, again, on the amateur level, you always tell me stay in my lane expertise. But I enjoy
stay in your lane,
right,
bro.
I enjoy, and we won't get into that story. you know that we're not going there. The ankle story, yeah, that's
exactly.
not good. I get reminded of that all the time. But so they've got to strengthen the muscles again, but they also have to get the soft tissue, and not just where the surgery was, but the surrounding areas to relax, open up again, and get the flexibility, the motion, and the stability back. Is that right?
Sure. So, I'm sure he had a major surgery. I'm sure he was put in a splint.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, for my patient, the day after surgery, he's moving every joint of the shoulder except the actual shoulder joint itself, because that's where the surgery occurred. So you can always begin immediately working the joints above and the joints below, because a lot of the times when you work those particular joints, like for example, he could have started working day one with the bicep, because the long head of the bicep crosses into the shoulder joint. He could have started working day one with the tricep, because one of the triceps crosses into the shoulder joint. You start working day one with the scapula. A therapist can start pumping or mobilizing the sternoclavicular joint, the AC joint. So unfortunately, and it's not the surgeon's fault, but a lot of surgeons, after they do a surgery, they put their client in a splint and they say, no therapy for 6 weeks. And the reason why they say that is because, unfortunately, many of their surgeries have been hurt by a physical therapist. So for legality reasons now, and just for the mindset of their patients, a lot of them are put into a sling and they're told zero therapy for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, when you do that, all of that fascia that we talked about, it gets scarred down. And again, we need to move the liquid. So that's when the manual therapy techniques really help to help accelerate that healing process.
I mean, that's a lot of stuff. Maybe I just tell Mike, hey, get on a plane and go down and see Dan. You want that?
I don't know anybody in Detroit. I was thinking if I had a colleague in Detroit.
It's like, hey, Mike. Here's what Dan's advice was: go to Detroit Metro, get on a plane, and get down to Fort Lauderdale.
Get on a plane and fly to Fort Lauderdale.
Does Eldoa focus specifically on the spine, or is it for all joints and parts of the body?
There's, I want to say, approximately 80 to 100 Eldoa. There's one for every joint in the spine. There's even one for each of the sacrum. And people say, well, the sacrum is a bone. No, the sacrum is a soft bone, and it can be moved. So there's Eldoa for all of the spine, all of the pelvis, the hip, the pubis, the glenohumeral joint, the AC joint, the sternoclavicular joint. So there's Eldoa for those for your shoulder patient guy. There's Eldoa for the TMJ. There's Eldoa for the cranium. I always say there's pretty much an Eldoa for every joint in the body, but there really isn't any Eldoa for the knee or the ankle or the elbow or the hands, to my knowledge. And I'm sure Voyer could probably make one up on the fly, but to my knowledge, there isn't.
So it's more the body the joints within the body cavity and not the extremities?
Yeah, but there is for the shoulder, for the glenohumeral joint. There's an Eldoa. There's an Eldoa for the AC joint, SC joint. Like I said, the cranium, the TMJ. So, but the most popular ones, Pete, are of the spine because they are so powerful. And I want to say that maybe the reason why they're the most powerful because everybody has back pain. And I think maybe that's the one why they're prescribed the most.
Why do you think more people aren't doing it? Is it just because it hasn't grown enough? It's not mainstream.
It's just not mainstream enough yet. It hasn't grown enough. I'm doing something on Channel 10 locally on August 13. There's Men's Health magazine. There's hopefully, we're talking stuff. So there's some magazines that we're talking about to get it out there. I just don't think there's so few of us because Dr. Voyer, for most of his career, was based in France and throughout the European Union. And I just don't think there's enough practitioners. But I'll tell you, a lot of the teams now, my buddy Bryce Turner from Southern California, he's taken us to a lot of teams. I mean, I know firsthand the Washington Capitals has an Eldoa person. The Nationals has an Eldoa person. The Dallas Stars had an Eldoa person. The LA Dodgers. I did it for the Tampa Bay Rays, for the Atlanta Braves, for the New York Yankees. Who else was there? The Oakland A's.
Jeez. It's spreading fast, I think.
It's spreading fast. The Golden State Warriors have somebody that does Eldoa in their program. I mean, these are just teams off the top of my head that are popping into my mind because it is such a powerful tool. It's the most powerful recovery tool that I think you can do next to eating properly and getting plenty of sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I even heard on Joe Rogan, Ben Greenfield was on there, biohacker, world renowned biohacker, and it was early in the interview. He goes, Rogan says, "What are you up to?" He's like, "Hey, man, I'm doing this new thing. It's awesome. It's called Eldoa." I'm like, "Holy shit,
I heard
pretty
that.
cool." I'm like, "Hey, I do that. Yeah. I do that." Like, go away.
So it's out there. But again, we have, I don't know how many people are in the United States. It's a big
350 million.
Okay, so for the few thousand people that are doing it, it's just a drop in the bucket.
Mm-hmm. Well, let them. They'll learn. They'll get on it. Is Eldoa the best thing that a golfer could do to play well and avoid injury and then rehab from injury to get back to playing?
I would say, okay, not to play well because again, it's not going to help you put that little white ball in that damn little hole. But
let's say that someone play well. By that I mean, if they have limited range of motion, and me or their coach or their instructor trying to get them to do something they're swinging, they can't. The Eldoa will help them get thoracic mobility.
So if I was going to pick, two tools from my toolbox for that purpose, it would be the myofascial stretching for the soft tissue to give freedom to the tissue, and it would be the Eldoa to open the joint. It would be those two tools. Now, again, those are tools. They're not the end-all, be-all. I get accused of this from people. It's not fair because it's just a tool. And like any other thing, you need to know when to use that tool. But if you're going to give me a blanket question, what are the two most profound tools that I would use for someone's longevity and to create space and to potentially give the most amount of range of motion, and it was exercise only, it would be myofascial stretching and Eldoa.
For someone, let's say there's a golf. Let's say there's a young Dan Hellman, high school kid, plays basketball and other sports, and he's getting into golf. He can't just, he's got to have the means to get down to Fort Lauderdale and see you. And they want to play golf and they want to avoid pain or they want to get out of it. And what would be your best advice for them? I mean, can they go online?
www.mytpi.com and Eldoa for golf. On that program, God, what are they selling? It's stupidly cheap. I believe I have 12 to 15 Eldoa, and I believe I have 5 to 10 myofascial stretches, and I have the GPS of the thoracic cage. So if you wanted to get the biggest bang for your buck, just go to mytpi.com, go down to the bottom of the page, click Eldoa for golf, and buy that program. Also on that program, there's 3 Eldoa workouts that you can put on your program and you can on your computer, and you can literally follow me doing a full Eldoa workout from warm up to cool down. So that is the best. And I think somebody had asked you this question when I saw you posting, is anybody has any questions for me? And somebody said, I believe, is it specific? Is the Eldoa specific to sports, or is there a specific routine? Wasn't there a question like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I thought that was a great question. Okay, so there's really what we call 4 wellness Eldoa. And the 4 wellness Eldoa would be L5S1, because that's really the most commonly injured vertebra in the human body. You have T8, T9, which is the apex of the rotation in the thoracic curve. You have T6, T7, which is the Eldoa for the modern man, because everyone's on a damn cell phone nowadays. Everybody's head is going to fall off, I swear. So you have T6, T7. And then you have C4, C5, which is the apex of the cervical curve. So in the grand scheme of things, if you did those 4 Eldoa religiously every day, that would be a really good start. Now, if you were specific to golf, every sport has its different biomechanics. So the Eldoa that I have on the Eldoa for Golf program are specific to the game of golf. The one that I plan on doing for baseball is specific to the game of baseball, biomechanically. The one that I want to do for tennis is specific to that. Will a lot of them overlap? Yes. But I'll tell you right now, the Eldoa that I have chosen for baseball are different than the Eldoa that I have for golf. And also for baseball, I actually broke it up into batters and throwers. So because the biomechanics are different. So it can be individual, but there can also be just a general wellness program with the Eldoa.
Yeah, it is. I mean, whoever coined it, the magic bullet. Hit the nail right on the head, because that
was me.
Okay, you get the trademark and the copyright on that one.
That was me. The hashtag. I always hashtag the magic bullet for back pain. The back pain magic bullet.
Was there? Let me just kind of segue a little bit into getting back into you and your career and your history. was there any client that was more rewarding working with them because you took them from something that they didn't think they could do to something that was just like life changing for them? I mean, and I'm not asking for names.
Yes, but I can't comment.
I didn't think it was going to be that, but okay, I understand. No, don't worry about it.
No comment.
What about, would that be the most challenging client you ever had as well? Would that answer be the same?
Not the most challenging because they didn't want to do the work, just the most challenging because of the circumstances, yes.
Geez, I thought I was such a wreck that I would be the answer to that question.
You're a work in progress.
Yeah, I know. I'm always seem to be in that percent.
Stop getting the damn shingle.
Yeah, no shit. So if someone was strapped for time, let's say they had 1 hour a day a week max, whatever, on the mytpi.com in the Eldoa section, they could pick and choose like that lifestyle section you talked about?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I know, because when as I got involved in, I knew about the C.H.E.K, and then I found the C.H.E.K practitioners and went to Justin, and then Justin pushed me, gotten down to you. I remember the first time I talked to him, and I had the C.H.E.K golf biomechanic manual, and I called him. We're talking about who I am, what I do, and so forth. And I said, well, yeah, I've been doing the stretches in the manual. He goes, which one? I said, all of them. So he goes, no, it's not how it works. But I mean, you get back to that athlete mentality. Okay, I'm not sure which one, so let me just do them all. It's got to help. Evidently, I was.
Yeah, I just looked at the MyTPI website, and Greg is selling that whole program for $169. There's easily a couple $1,000s worth of stuff in that program.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it's done wonders for me. It's got me. I mean, and like we said, I'm a work in progress, but it's got me from being in almost chronic pain to where I can enjoy life. And you and I are working towards the goal of getting back to playing, and we have our steps, and then playing competitively and so on. Again, I'm not saying I'm going back to big time golf.
No. And Pete, like I told you this, and I really think as long as you can commit, I mean, even if it's a practice, right? So if people can commit 15 minutes a day just to do something like this, they are going to get results. If you just do a couple things here and there once a week, you're wasting your time. Go have surgery. And I don't like people having surgery, but that's basically my attitude. You have a choice. You can go have surgery, or you can commit to doing this every day of your life and avoid surgery. I don't like losing body parts. It's the one body that I'm gifted in my lifetime, and I want to keep all my body parts. So, I look at, hey, I'm going to do the work to keep what I have.
Let me just ask you an exercise question, because I remember, Charles Poliquin, and God rest his soul, was and the genius he was always saying that the squat was the king of exercises. But you have the gravity squat within the Golf Body Pro and Soma Therapy. Would you say that that's probably the king of exercise? Would you kind of go along with that?
I think the king of all exercises is the squat. Yes. But a good squat. So a squat where you have to maintain, or you attempt to maintain, your gravity line. During a deadlift, you break your gravity line. A deadlift is easy, and it's also the risk reward for the deadlift isn't worth it for me. Whereas the gravity squat, if you do a proper squat and you use all of the different pieces of the squat, not only do you open and decompress your spine, but you also literally pump your entire body. You move the liquid through your body. And so a good squat is good for everything. A bad squat is bad for everything. So just to say that, hey, the squat is the king of all exercises, well, I have dealt with many people that have been injured during this squat, and that's because of the way that they were doing it. If you do a proper squat, you cannot hurt yourself. It's impossible.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets a bad rap, is and I'm not knocking some therapists out there. There's a lot of people who mean well, but I don't think they understand the proper technique and or teach the proper technique. And they're usually the first ones to poo-poo. Oh, you're doing squats. You shouldn't do that. So maybe they don't have the dorsiflexion in the ankle or the range of motion in the hips.
Correct.
The thoracic mobility to extend the thoracic spine. And oh, no, you can't do squats. Okay. I mean, even years ago when I was corresponding with Dr. Half, as I mentioned, in Australia, he told me, he said, what's your theory on pink balance disc? I said, well, I'm not real big on it. I think that Olympic lifts, if done properly, are much better. He said, yeah, I agree 100%. And he's testing people with all electronic stuff all over him and everything. And he said, you can't load up enough weight on a disc to strengthen the smaller muscles on the spine and the core the way that you can in a squat. Now, he's not saying go out and do 400-pound squats if you're a golfer. But like you said, if you're doing it in exact proper form, the way it's supposed to be done, that it works the body the way that it needs to be worked.
Right.
All right. Let me ask you just a couple other. I know I'm burning up some time. I know you probably have important things to do, like golf or go hit balls. You can apply this to whether it's your career, your life in general, et cetera. What would you be most? What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Professionally, I'm most proud of my accomplishment with the last golfer I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
I think professionally, it was kind of the pinnacle of my career, and so much to the point where it was almost like I had postpartum depression. That it's like, okay, I can't go any higher, and the accomplishment was so incredible that I don't think it can be duplicated. So I would probably say that.
Do you think that validated to yourself that all that your way of doing things and all that you've learned over your entire career, that it gave it validation? Not that you needed it, but like just inside, like, yeah, I knew it, and now I proved it. Did it? Was anything like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, we all have an ego, and the ego can be a real bastard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, did that pacify my ego? Sure. I mean, I would be lying if I said it didn't. But I've also am a big enough boy to realize that there's more to life than pacifying my ego. So, yeah, I mean, there was some definite validation there.
Well, I might even argue that it's not just pacifying your ego. It's somewhat of a celebration, right? I mean, it is a phenomenal accomplishment what you did. And you could say it's ego. I would call it a celebration. The same way, I'll never forget when I was at Q school. And there was an old timer. Bob's got to be about 80 now. Played the tour back in the 50s, 60s. And I called him from Q school. I said, man, I'm just really struggling with the nerves. He goes, well, I kind of look at it this way. He goes, you're more excited to get going because you put so much work in it, and I watched you do it, than you are nervous. And that just put a complete different perspective on it. That's like, yeah, I am excited to get this thing going. So I'm not trying to change the way you think. Think you know me long, but I would say that you earned and deserve some celebration and maybe instead of thinking it's ego driven. But nonetheless, we can talk about that over a beer next time I'm down.
Sounds good. Gluten-free beer.
Yeah. What advice would you give to your younger self, and would young Dan have listened?
Oh, I love that question. What advice would I give to the younger Dan? I would tell the younger Dan to have more fun, to not take life so serious. And I say that with a grain of salt, because I think it was my seriousness that helped me, become the person that I am today. But yeah, have more fun in life.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got a long way to go. You can have a lot of fun now.
Man, I'm going to be 50 next year. Come on, I'm getting halfway there already.
Yeah, but you're like good wine. We'll call it like that. You're much more. You've earned your knowledge. Put it that way.
How about finely aged tequila?
There you go.
I like that better.
If you could go back to any age, what would it be and why?
If I could go back to any age?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I would probably say 39. Because after hitting 40, I don't know, the 40, the number 40 was kind of rough. I really liked saying that I was under 40, and I don't know, I was just kind of really starting to make my way, and I would maybe have done some things a little bit differently along the way. So, but I would not go back any further than that.
Fair enough. Let's see. How do you unwind? In other words, what do you do to get away from just the daily grind or chaos of life or your job?
Golf.
I thought that when I was writing that question, I said, "Don't ask this question." I know
Golf.
what the answer is.
And then right now I'm about 200 yards from the sand. So I love to go over and sit in the evening time, sit at the beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's.
And then my third thing is my dog.
Oh, I love my dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So you've obviously been very successful, but if you could have done something else in as a career, what would it have been?
I always say, I've always said that I want to come back as either an opera singer or a professional golfer. I've said that for years.
Bocelli?
What a weird, dichotomy, or what a weird duality. But I've been around singers, and I just find them just unbelievable at their craft. Mm-hmm. And then also too, I think being a professional golfer would be like the greatest gig in the world.
No, you say that. Now you were on the road, so let me just interject if I may, because
sure.
And it is the best when you're playing good and you're making cuts and you're making money and you're winning. You're on top of the world. But when you're 1,000 or 2,000 miles away from anybody you know, and you cannot keep the ball on the planet, that ceiling gets awfully close to you. It just
Oh yeah, but see, this was my dream, and see, I was coming back as a very high-level professional golfer, not having to play Monday qualifiers or anything.
All right, understood.
I'm not staying at the Motel 6 either, Pete. Come on.
I get it. Okay. Let's see. The best mistake you ever made.
Best mistake I ever made.
Whether it was not doing something and it turned out it was the best thing you did.
Stopping my last gig. I mean, it wasn't a mistake. I shouldn't say that. Best mistake. I don't know. I'll have to pass on that one.
Okay, no big deal.
I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm just trying to think the best one that I've ever made.
Yeah, I guess.
Sure.
Let me just kind of shed where the question. So if we all make mistakes, of course, right? We're humans, but and people who are highly driven like yourself, we tend to beat ourselves up when we make mistakes. You got to do better. You got to try to work harder. But sometimes mistakes push us in a direction that we need to go that we're not otherwise going in ourselves. Maybe it's karma,
sure.
Or whatever it is. The universe pushes us that way. So I that's kind of the background to that question. Was there a mistake you made that ended up being something really good in your life?
I can't think of anything.
No problem.
Can't think of anything.
You've got so much in your head that I hope that this is not the only time that we do these interviews.
No, I'm more. This is fun. I like doing this.
The best advice you were ever given.
Best advice I was ever given would have to. I mean, it was probably from Paul C.H.E.K, and he. When I had met him, I was not I was not in love with myself. For many reasons, and I think Paul really taught me to give Dan a break and to not be so hard on Dan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try to in playing golf and teaching golf. I try to tell people, you would never say the things. Let's say if you're in a team event, you and a partner in golf, member guest.
Mm-hmm.
So you would never say things to your partner that you say to yourself. People hit a shot and they, you suck. Okay, you would never say that to the guy or the girl you're playing with. But people just beat the hell out of themselves and they don't even know it. So yeah, I agree. And all right, everybody, thank work on improving that all the time. I'm right with you on that one.
It's tough, isn't
it? It almost, there's that fine line of the two poles of every emotion, and you got to walk that fine line. You get going too far one way or the other, and you can get crooked very quickly.
Absolutely.
If you had a mulligan in life, would you need it, and what would it be? You could go back and change anything.
Mulligan in life, yeah, I would have. I always say that something, and this is nothing major, but I wish I would have played an instrument and or taken art lessons. I wish I would have done something a little bit more on the creative side, use the other side of my brain instead of always being so analytical and focused. A little bit more creative.
Do you do that now?
I try. I got into doing a little bit of artwork for relaxation and stuff like that, but I still would love to. I would still love to learn an instrument, play an instrument or something like that.
Well, you're off. You got all this time off now. Off season in Florida. Next time I come down, I expect you to be jamming away jazz on a saxophone or something like that. Drums, whatever you got.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would probably be I think that's probably my mulligan. And then, maybe another thing too is even a foreign language. Mm-hmm. And traveling as much as I've done, I'm amazed by people speaking 3, 4, 5 different languages. I think it's very impressive.
Yeah, very much so. You're like I said, your brain is full of so much info, and I think I messaged this. So you are a very difficult person to prep for, because it's like, what am I going to ask him? And I mean, I sat there for 2 days writing stuff down. I'm like, geez, there's no way I can ask Dan all this stuff. We'll never get off the phone. But with all that info in your head, you've got to be working on a book sometime soon.
Actually, I am. I'm going to do a book on back pain. I think I've been around it enough that I can maybe offer a little different perspective on it than what's out there now. So that's in the works. Awesome.
I can't wait to check that one out when you get it. If you need a supermodel for your pictures inside, just let me know. Flex my body.
I'll sign you up. As long as you don't charge me too much for the rights.
Nope. I'm all good. All right, you ready for some rapid fire?
I'll see what I can do.
All right, let's go. If you weren't a therapist trainer, you would have been a what?
Probably a doctor of some sort, orthopedic or a general practitioner.
Dream foursome.
Dream foursome to play with?
Mm-hmm.
Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, and Arnold Palmer.
Pretty strong foursome there.
Now I'm gonna forget Palmer, and I'm gonna go with Hogan.
I don't think anyone would argue with the substitute. I mean, how do you argue substituting Ben Hogan for Arnold, or vice versa? You can't, right?
I just substituted. Sorry.
Let's see. If you could change one rule in golf, what would it be?
If I could change one rule on the speed of play, I think somehow they have to pick up the speed of play, and I don't know how to do that because golf is such a technical sport, and you have to know which way the wind's blowing, which way the grass is growing. Pick up the speed of play.
I know it was different, but when I was in high school, I'll just say late 80s, early 90s, if you didn't play in 4 hours max, if you were like 4:10, 4:15, you were deemed a slow player, and that was walking.
I know.
Like if you weren't I mean, the norm was 3 hours 50 minutes, and it's like you're at 4+. Pick it up, buddy. Too slow. And now it's like
it would be
5.5.
nice to get around a golf in. Yeah, it would be nice to get around a golf in 2.5, 3 hours. That'd be great. But that's the problem with a little bit of problem with golf nowadays. When you do play golf, you have to pretty much plan on the entire day.
Oh, that's why I never play until the evening around here.
Yeah, speed of play, man. Speed of play.
Yeah, we'll zip around, depending on how many guys we have. Or 3:45, 4 max. You tee off at 4 o'clock, done by 7:30.
Just get ready to hit. Go to your ball and get ready to hit, for Christ's sakes.
Let's see. Okay. This to you might seem like a stupid question. And but I ask it to everybody. Greatest of all time, Tiger or Jack?
It's a stupid question. Tiger's the GOAT. Tiger's the GOAT. There's no comparison.
All right.
Sorry.
I figured you'd say that. I mean, based on the artwork in your studio, give an answer. But I have to ask it, right? Okay.
That's fine.
You could win any golf tournament in the world. What would it be?
The Masters first, and then the British Open second.
Yeah, I'm taking you. No, it's not quite yet. It starts Thursday, but you can watch all the pregame stuff. You can watch the guys, Brandel and the guys go at it. I always enjoy that.
Yep.
Bucket list of courses. I know you mentioned playing some great ones and having some great experience on golf. What would be your
ones that I haven't played that I want to
Yeah.
play? I mean, I would love to play Augusta. I mean, that would take an act of God. I want to play. I've already played it, but my favorite course in the world is the Old Course, and I need to get back and play the Old Course again. But for I've gotten to play a lot of beautiful courses, and the only one that's really would be on my bucket list would be Augusta.
What's the favorite of the ones you played? Was it St. Andrews?
St. Andrews.
Have you played Seminole?
Nothing like it. I have not.
I mean, you're right down the street from it, pretty much.
I have not.
Chalk that one up.
Nothing beats the Old Course.
Yeah, I've got to get there. That's one of the reasons I gave you that list of goals. If I can just play recreationally again, a Scotland trip is in the works.
It's amazing.
Cavity back or blade?
I'm playing PXG. I think they're blades.
Are you really? My brother's a PXG rep.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give you a real
Right,
quick
close.
story on that. So he got it. He was with Titleist, did club fitting for them for a while, and of course he had to have a Titleist set of clubs. So he goes to PXG, and his boss says, "Nope, you can't have those. You're getting a set of PXG." Of course, now he's working all the time. He's hardly playing, and I think they did a quarterly competition who could hit the best numbers, and he came in nationwide, I think, second. So they gave him a black-headed set.
Wow.
And before he got him, I said, "Hey, what are you gonna do with that set of yours? Because you hardly used it." He's like, "Well, I don't know. I might put it on eBay." I said, "Yeah, but you know that serial number, wrong person buy those, they take them back to the company, you get in trouble." He says, "Yeah, you're right." And he says, "You want them?"
Nice.
But like I sent you that picture, I said, they're sitting in a box still. They're sitting 3 feet away from me here in the box that I have not hit them yet.
I have the silver pair and the black pair, so I got two.
So it's... I'm waiting for the Dan Hellman seal of approval to start swinging again. And
all right, well, let's get you out of the shingle phrase.
No kidding.
Get you back going.
Let's see. A couple more. Most influential person in your life was who?
I'll check.
And then one more, if you don't mind. The best part of your day is what?
Coming home and seeing my dog.
That I can understand that 100%.
They're amazing.
So, like I tell everyone, you're a genius. We've blown through 2 hours like it was nothing, and only scratched pretty much the surface of Eldoa, training, golf, how to be healthy. I don't know how you're able to keep all this info in your head, but we definitely have to do this one again.
Anytime, Pete. Just let me know.
So let me know when your book's coming out. I can't wait for it. Last thing, if someone wants to get a hold of you, be it for a training session, they want you to lecture at something, teach a class, what's the best way for for the listeners to get a hold of your website, social media, so forth?
Sure. Website is H3, the letter H as in Henry, the number 3, bydan.com. And, all my social media, everything's on there. And you can always call the office. It's 954-566-0585. Telephone is good. We don't use it enough.
Yeah, no kidding. Anything else you want to tell everybody about upcoming classes you're teaching, where you're teaching, speaking?
Yeah, we have coming up in the fall, we start another program starting. So, and I'm starting actually Guy VOYER's therapy classes. So I don't know if any therapists or whatever are going to listen to this podcast, but if they do, there's a manual therapy class starting in November, and that's going to be 3 classes in a row of pumping. And we didn't talk about pumping, but pumping is a wonderful manual technique that moves the liquid for anyone that's, a massage therapist, physical therapist, osteopath, chiropractor, anyone that does hands-on work. And then we have a continuation of the Soma training program, and we have an Aldoa class in October, and then a respiratory and circulatory class in November. So the fall will start getting busy again.
Yeah, so everybody, and they can find out all that information on your website?
It's all on my website.
All right, everybody, go check them out. Dan, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.